Hey Dragons, and welcome to this instructional video for Lesson 10 Part 1, What is Foreign Policy? The main idea behind this civics lesson is to establish and maintain relations with other nations. Governments around the world set up foreign policies, which are basically guidelines and goals for dealing with other nations. With that in mind, by the end of watching this video, you'll be able to summarize the main goals of American foreign policy and describe the tools the United States uses to achieve its foreign policy goals. Now that the outcomes for this lesson have been shared with you, haha, gotcha, let's get started. The United States is one nation among many in the world. One of the main duties of any government is making a plan for relating to other nations. A government's foreign policy is a plan that outlines the goals it hopes to meet in its relations with other countries. Foreign policy also sets forth the ways these goals are to be met. What do Americans hope for in relations with other countries? To think about that question, you might ask yourself what we, as individual Americans, want in our relations with the people around us. First of all, we want to be respected. We want others to treat us as equals. We would like to live in a safe place, free from the fear of harm. As adults, we would like to be able to earn a living. These goals are like the goals we have as a nation. In general, the foreign policy goals of the United States are to protect citizens' safety, to promote prosperity, and to work for peace and democracy in other countries. Government leaders naturally try to protect the interests of their country. Acting in the national interest involves making sure that the nation is safe. National security, or the ability to keep the nation safe from attack or harm, is the chief goal of American foreign policy. Because war is the greatest danger to any nation, national security mainly focuses on the threat of war. A second goal of American foreign policy is to get countries to work together as a way to keep us out of war. In today's world, wars anywhere can be a threat to people everywhere. People fear that other countries may be drawn into the fighting. They fear that nuclear weapons may be used and the world destroyed. Increasing trade is a third goal of the United States foreign policy. Trade is good for the United States economy. Trade creates markets for American goods and services, earning profits for our businesses. It also brings us goods from other countries. Trade also brings greater interdependence and therefore cooperation. Maintaining good trading relations helps the United States meet its goals of national security and world peace. The profit and products nations gain from trade give them a good reason to avoid war with their trading partners. Another goal of American foreign policy is to encourage all countries to respect the human rights of freedom, justice, and equality. Americans believe that democracy, in which citizens have the final say in their government, is the best way to protect human rights. Thus, they want to help people in other countries who are trying to form or keep democratic governments. History shows that countries in which human rights are denied can be a threat to world peace. When citizens do not have the right to take part in their own government, revolutions and civil wars are likely to break out, and other countries are likely to be drawn in. Therefore, encouraging human rights and democracy is also a way to meet our foreign policy goals of peace and security. How does a country go about meeting its foreign policy goals? The United States uses several tools, such as defense, alliances, diplomacy, trade measures, and intelligence, in its relations with other countries. Defense is an important tool of American foreign policy. It helps the government maintain national security. American armed forces with modern weapons, aircraft, and ships are the means by which we defend ourselves against aggression, an attack or threat of attack by another country. A key part of United States foreign policy has been deterrence, keeping a strong defense to discourage aggression by other nations. In the arms race between the United States and the Soviet Union, both sides claimed that they were building weapons as deterrents against aggression. Sometimes it is not clear whether a nation is using its armed forces for defense or aggression. When the Soviets sent their army into Afghanistan in 1979, they said they were just helping the Afghan government defend against anti-communist forces. The United States accused the Soviets of aggression, of using its military power to take over an independent nation. In 1989, when American forces overthrew Panama's dictator Manuel Noriega, Latin American leaders accused the United States of aggression. President George H.W. Bush said the invasion's purpose was to protect American interests, especially the Panama Canal, and to help Panama get rid of a corrupt leader. The United States also meets its foreign policy goals by forming military, political, or economic alliances with other countries. NATO is a military alliance created to protect Western Europe from Soviet aggression. NATO members pooled military forces into one army in order to better defend themselves if attacked. An example of a political alliance is the Organization of American States, or OAS, made up of countries in North, Central, and South America. The OAS helps its members work together peacefully, trying to settle disputes before they become violent. The OAS also reports on human rights in its member countries and helps to keep elections fair and honest. The United States is a member of several economic alliances. One is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or OECD. The 38 members of the OECD, mostly Western European countries, agree to help each other's economic well-being through trade. They also work together in giving aid to developing nations. Can you remember settling a disagreement with someone by talking it out? In a similar way, the American government tries to settle disagreements with other countries peacefully. To do so, it depends mostly on a third tool of foreign policy, diplomacy. Diplomacy is the relations and communications carried out between countries. When countries disagree, they send representatives called diplomats to talk about the issues. The United States uses diplomacy not only to settle disagreements, but also to accomplish tasks such as building a canal or space station. Alliances and trade agreements are also made through diplomacy. Diplomacy often results in formal agreements known as treaties. Usually, diplomacy is carried out by members of the Department of State. Sometimes, however, there is a summit meeting, a meeting at which the president talks about important issues with heads of other governments. In 2018, for example, President Donald Trump traveled to Singapore for a summit meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, at which the two leaders discussed military and economic issues. Another tool used to meet foreign policy goals is foreign aid, a program of giving military and economic help to other countries. After World War II, the United States gave aid to European countries to help them rebuild factories, farms, cities, and homes destroyed in the war. Since the end of World War II, the United States has given or loaned almost $500 billion in foreign aid to over 100 countries. Foreign aid can support American policy goals by strengthening governments and political groups that are friendly to the United States. In some cases, this military aid has helped countries that are trying to put down rebellions within their borders. Sometimes the United States has sent weapons to rebels who are struggling against governments considered unfriendly to American interests. Economic aid takes many forms. The United States may help pay for a hospital or a dam to control floods or produce electricity. Aid might be loans or grants to help a country start a new industry. Sending experts and teachers to work in developing countries is also a form of aid. The United States also sends aid in a crisis such as a flood or earthquake. Aid helps nations' economies to grow and is seen as a way to reduce the chance of revolution and war. Foreign aid has caused bitter debates in Congress and the nation. Americans disagree over how much and what kind of aid to give. Some say that giving help to other countries is our duty as a rich and powerful country. They say if we do not give aid, poorer nations will turn to other governments that are not necessarily friendly to the United States, for help. Another argument for economic aid is that it helps the United States. Countries that receive our aid can then buy American products. Those who oppose aid do so for two main reasons. Some say that we should solve problems at home first and not send so much money out of the country. Other critics say that the kind of aid we give does more harm than good. They charge that our military aid has sometimes helped governments that violate human rights. Just because a group is friendly to the United States, they say, it is not a good reason to give it money and weapons. Critics also believe that some kinds of economic aid give the United States too much control over how other countries develop. Another tool of foreign policy is trade measures, or the terms under which the United States trades with other countries. One trade measure is a quota, which states how much of a foreign product can be sold in the United States. Trade measures also include limits on what products United States businesses can sell abroad, such as weapons, or whether untested foreign products, such as drugs, can be brought into the United States. In recent years, a foreign policy tool has been sanctions, measures to stop or limit trade with another nation in order to change its behavior. In the early 2000s, for example, India and Pakistan conducted underground nuclear weapons tests. To demonstrate its disapproval of the tests, the United States imposed economic sanctions on both nations. The United States has two main goals in regulating trade with other countries. One is to get other countries to buy American goods. The other is to get our trading partners to support us in other foreign policy goals, such as stopping human rights violations and reducing possible threats to peace. Information about another country and what its government plans to do is called intelligence. Most countries work hard to gather intelligence in order to help them meet the goal of national security. The Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA, and other agencies gather information for the United States government. The CIA focuses mostly on countries it thinks might be unfriendly and tries to learn what the governments in these countries intend to do. It also tries to predict how these governments will react to what the United States does. Much of intelligence is secret. Information is sometimes gathered by spying. Sometimes intelligence agencies have helped overturn the government of a country. In Chile, in 1973, for example, the CIA took part in overthrowing the government of Salvador Allende. The United States government thought Allende was not favorable to our national interests. Like defense, diplomacy, foreign aid, and trade measures, intelligence is an important tool of foreign policy. So there you have it with Lesson 10, Part 1, What is Foreign Policy? By this point, you should know that foreign policy refers to the way nations deal with other nations. The United States foreign policy has four goals: national security, world peace, trade, and human rights and democracy. The United States has 6 tools to meet its foreign policy goals: defense, alliances, diplomacy, foreign aid, trade measures, and intelligence. And foreign policy is constantly changing, depending on both the countries involved or the situation. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel to have the entire catalog of civics videos available at your fingertips. Click the subscribe button and then click the follow bell to receive notifications as to when the channel is updated. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in class, Dragons. See ya!